Hey YouTube land, welcome back to another action figure review by Tycondrius, and today we are taking a look at not one but two Warhammer 40,000 McFarlane figures. Now these were released last year and I only managed to pick them up recently, and I have the box for one. I don't have the box for the other because I got it at a discount because the box is completely damaged, so I don't have the box in hand for that. So without further ado, we'll just take a quick look at the box. And what this is the Orks Mek, which is this guy here. If I just move the box down, you can see his name there. It's the Big Mek in mega armor and the Ork Knob in mega armor with buzzsaws. So the boxes are pretty much a standard affair. These are the mega size figures, so they're pretty much same size box that you get with the Ogryn from the Dark Tide video game. But without further ado, we'll just move stuff quickly along and showcase the figures that come inside the box. So the one I got first was this guy, which is the Big Mek. Now they both come with the same single accessory. They come with one of these bases each. I don't have the one taken out for either one of these. This is actually out of, I think, the Chaos Space Marine, or one of the Space Marine boxes. I think the mega knobs don't really need these because their foot size is so big that they kind of tend to stand on their own. They can be a bit cumbersome, but once you get them in the right position, they will stand quite nicely without you having to do anything with a base. So I have all three figures. I did a review for the first one, which is the one with the twin shooter and the power claw. This is the Big Mek, how differs slightly from the regular ones, so we'll get into that. So the basic figure is the same. The base bodies for these tend to be the same with different plates. So this chunk of body here is all one piece, and these little plates on the front are a separate piece, and depending on which one you're buying, they'll have different paint apps. So for example, this one has the Goth style checkered markings on his foot and on his shoulder pad. This one, even though it has the same shoulder pad, doesn't have the checkered markings painted. He only has them on one of his legs. And then if I bring in the other guy, who has a different chest plate again, these chest plates are actually a separate piece that are glued on in place. So it's the way McFarlane was able to make a good few kind of distinctive looking orcs without having to go too overboard. This guy has the checker pattern painted on one of his claws, and I think that's pretty much where the only paint app for that checker pattern is. Again, this guy has a different boss pole to the guy with the buzzsaws, but we'll bring him back in again later when I do a comparison. We'll just leave him off to the side there. Actually, I probably will be bringing them back in and out throughout this review. So things to note on these guys is these back pieces are actually separate in the boxes, and they are a pain in the butt to get in place. My original guy, I'm not sure if it's even sitting still right on him, but you really have to heat up the back of this guy, or the back of all of them, with a bit of heat. I use a hair dryer to get the heat on these guys so I could push this in. Once it's in, it's in. It doesn't seem to want to come back out, but just getting it in was a bit of a pain in the butt. This guy does share some parts with the Ork with the custom shooter. This guy has a custom shooter with Scorcher, whereas the other one is just a basic custom shooter. And you can see it's the exact same sculpt. The only difference is this front section here, where you have the stabby bladey bit on this one, or if you can just get into shot, the stabby bladey bit on this one. You have a burner piece on this one, but all in all, it is the exact same arm sculpt with same cabling and everything. There's not much in the difference. It's just this front piece is different. On his opposite side, he has a complete unique arm, as does the guy with the big claw, and the same with the guy with the buzzsaws. So if I get this guy to stand in the background, hopefully he will. As I said, sometimes just getting that sweet spot for them to stand is the main thing, but they do stand. They're a bit cumbersome because they're very top heavy. They're big chunky lads in big armor, so they do tend to, you have to get them into that right spot. Maybe the stand does help, but I haven't used it on any of them. So This guy has this, I think it's supposed to be a power claw. It looks kind of like the old super lift dropper attachment for the mechs used to use. This back piece, depending on what you want to call it, it's either a custom force field or it's a teleporty device, depending on which way you want to use it, because the Ork mechs are known for tinkering with, basically they're the Orks versions of an engineer, so they build things out of scrap and out of anything they can find. And this guy is no different. He built a either custom portable force field, or if depending on what way you want to look at it, it could be a thing for teleporting him and his boys into battle. Or it could be just for show. It mightn't do anything at all, but most of the way Ork tech works is that they believe that it works, and then it works. So you have that. He has a unique head sculpt. He's the only one that doesn't have one of the jaw pieces, and it is nice to see that they didn't just reuse the same jaw piece on the guy with the buzzsaws. He has a unique jaw piece. Again, this was a pain in the butt to put in place. Yeah, man, stand up there, you. This was an annoying pain in the butt to plug into place. This is separate, and the back piece is separate on this guy. Only the backpack is separate on the mech version. But he does have these cool boss looking buzzsaws on either hands. Now, I usually prefer the Orks to have like a shooter on one side and like close combat weapon on the other, but it is an actual setup for Orks for the miniature game that you can have two of these buzzsaw things, and this guy is exactly what he says in the tin. He has buzzsaws for hands. Again, the back piece was a bit of a pain in the butt to plug into place, heat it up and push it into place, but you have to be kind of forceful to get it in all the way. Sometimes you'll have it in and you think it's in, but it's not all the way. It has to be kind of flush to the body piece. So, and this guy they all have the same articulation, so the arms can rotate all the way around. Arms can move up that much. There is a single hinged elbow. Now, because of the way the arm is sculpted, it does have a bit of swivel, but it's not intended to, because this piece will pop out of place if you do swivel it. Depending on which boy you use, you have a swivel on the wrist, or where the kind of wrist would be. You have these big box things over their hands, and then the buzzsaws are for controlling like the weapons on their hands. So you have like the controllers for the buzzsaws are probably inside there. He does have a waist swivel. He doesn't really have anything in the head. Unlike the other Orks, he doesn't actually have a helmet on. He's the only one that has a unhelmeted head, which is kind of cool. So if you were a customizer, you could pop this head off and put it onto some other body if you wanted kind of unhelmeted Ork. Or if you wanted to swap the heads off, you could probably swap this head with the other one. Like if you got two versions of this guy, you could probably swap the two heads around, so you have a more unique version if you wanted more of them. The mech is kind of a kind of more individual character, so you generally wouldn't have multiple versions of them in a squad. But like the general Orks have like just general heads, so you can mix and match if you want. Or if you want to go the insane route of 3D printing one, you could probably 3D print one and replace the head on this to make it look even more orky, depending on which way you want to go with it. Now, I won't take the jaw piece off because it was a pain in the butt to get in, but it is noteworthy to say that he has an open mouth. I'm pretty sure you might be able to see it in there. And he actually has a painted teeth and stuff, which is quite nice. Same with the Big Mech. Now, he's the only one that has the open mouth, the buzzsaw guy. So as I said, if you wanted a buzzsaw guy without it, you can leave this jaw piece off, but it's up to yourself. See, this one doesn't actually come with it, but you have the slots where it would normally go on these guys. So this guy has no jaw piece, but you have same articulation. Arms can rotate around. They are quite chunky arms, so sometimes they tend to droop because these weapons are very heavy on these guys. The legs are just kind of more forward and back. They have a single jointed knee, and then they have a giant ball peg kind of thing on the ankle, and then they have foot articulation as well. But as I said, you have to get them into that sweet spot to get them to stand just right, and they will stand because they have a big footprint basically, but they are a bit cumbersome and they can be top heavy. So just something to be noteworthy of. because the stand that they come with is so small, I don't think the stand would even make a difference if you put it on them for them to fall over. But it is nice seeing that this guy has a different back piece. If you wanted to, again, if you bought multiples of these two, you could swap the back pieces to have different guys, and you can just, if you want, just touch the paint up on different areas on them just to make them look more like a ragtag unit. And these guys are quite big. So going to the main orc body, we'll bring in the tape measure. So the main orc body itself is around 7.5 inches. That's without adding in these things on the back. The one for the big mech brings you up to nearly 10.5 inches. The one for this guy is like 10.25. And this business here as well. The guy over here, he's a little bit smaller, just under the 10. So depending on which guy you're going for, they'll have a different size of the boss pole on their back, or the gubbins on the back of this guy. So for more 40k size comparisons, we'll bring in one of the standard marines. These guys do tower over the standard marine. Let me see if I can get this guy to stand a little bit better and more neutral, so you can bring in other stuff. So you can see they do tower over the marines. I have one of my Adepta Serratus, the sister's battle sister. So she is fairly dwarfed by these guys. We have a Chaos Space Marine whose backpack has fallen off because they're very he doesn't want to plug into place. He is a little bit shorter, tiny amount shorter than the Marine, and that makes him a little bit shorter than the Orks. I'm kind of running out of space, but we'll bring in the Traitor Guard because I don't have the other one nearby. But he is around the same height. Oh, this is the Traitor Guardsman from the Dark Tide game. And I'm going to move him into the back. I'm going to have to try and make some space for this guy because I do have the Ogren from the said Dark Tide game, which is also a 40k figure. Now, I don't have the other Xenos figures handy, unfortunately. There goes his backpack. These guys have very loose fitting backpacks, unfortunately. So I'm just going to move them off the side altogether. And that means I can bring in this old big chunky boy. This is the Ogren. And even by orc standards, the Ogren does tower over them, which is true to form, because depending on orcs in orc fashion, the stronger they are, the more brutal they are, the bigger they get. And orc knobs are some of the biggest ones, but the war bosses dwarf them, and Ogrens tend to be bigger than the standard orc boy, which would probably roughly be about this height. And then you got orc knobs, which are bigger than an orc boy. Then you got the war boss, which is bigger than an orc knob, and so on and so forth. So this guy would be roughly in scale. You can even see he towers over the regular Space Marine in the back there, which again is in scale because Ogrens they're considered subhumans, but they're also considered bigger than your standard Space Marine, even with the Primaris or the Rubicon Intercessor style Space Marine. Ogrens, I think, still outshine them in height, but not in any other sort of fashion. You see if we can get this guy back in there. You can barely even see any orcs now. So I'm going to try and squish this guy over here instead. So there you can barely see all the orcs in the background, which is the main reason for this review. But there are the Mega Knob Orks in the McFarlane line. I do hope that they do come out and release regular orc boys. Don't get me wrong, I really like the McFarlane line. Price point is quite nice for what they are, but they seem to have dropped the ball in the sense of army building stuff that they could easily make for the line that would sell like hotcakes, i.e. basic troop choices for races, Xenos races, normal races, Imperial races, the Imperium chapters, Space Marine chapters. They did like a head pack or some sort of like weapons pack just a 40k weapons pack for the Space Marines, that would be nice. People would probably pick up on those and customize the hell out of more Space Marines. More Space Marine chapters would be nice. I mean, at the time of this recording, the only ones we really have is Ultramarines. We got a Dark Angel recently. One of the older ones is the Raven Guard, who is they're kind of more obscure Space Marine chapter, in the sense that they're not kind of the poster boy kind of Space Marine chapters, considering you have like Space Wolves, Black Templars, and Blood Angels, which there is a Blood Angel figure, I just don't have him nearby. So like they've only touched on the Space Marine chapters for the 40k line. They've kind of branched out into Orks and other Xenos, which is good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that it would be nice if they did like a base army builder kind of figure. The Space Marines are army builders, but they're limited to what they come with weapon wise. So like all the Dark Angel guys come with the same plasma pistol and sword. It would have been so nicer if they had included I don't have it here on these guys, the open hand for two-handed weapon holding, and then give them stuff like bolt guns, bolt rifles, all those kind of nice kind of simplified weapons that Space Marines would have on a basic squad, as in like, you know, plasma guns, melta guns, flamers. You could easily do a weapon pack with all those and the additional hand for holding them two-handed, and people would probably buy those. Again, I'm getting off point. Same thing with the Ork Boys. If they did a basic Ork Boy thing with optional parts, people would buy them, I would imagine, straight off the gap, because that's what the general fans want. They want army builders that they can customize slightly, make more unique, and then add bits to and make them more like a giant squad of large oversized figures. And I'm going to wrap up here, because I'm going to just keep waffling on about, you know, what they could do, what they couldn't do, or what they could do versus what they haven't done. Well, as I said, the Ork Meganobs are actually a really good team. There is one other version of them which I didn't pick up, which is the artist proof version. I think there's two of those actually. There's an artist proof version of the Mek that doesn't have any paint on, it's just the grey figure. And the same with, I think it's either the Buzzsaw guy or it's the guy with the shooter, comes in a grayscale version that you can paint yourself. And I think they might have part swapped a few bits. So I think he might come with the unhelmeted head, but he comes with the shooter. I'm not too sure on that, but I know there is two artist proof versions of the Orks, but I haven't picked up any of those. But all in all, these guys are pretty awesome. They're big figures, so if you don't have a lot of room on your shelf, you might need to pick and choose who you're going for, but they do look really, really good on a shelf together. So there you go, guys. Oh, and just before I go, I should note that the Space Marine over here that has an all blue helmet, this isn't the standard one, this is one I actually customized. The standard Ultramarine one was a sergeant that came with a red helmet. Again, why they didn't do just a basic Ultramarine with blue, all blue, who knows. But I just repainted the helmet with the base McFarlane blue from Citadel Paints and just gave it a hard coat over it and then called it a day. But overall, really good figures. I do enjoy the McFarlane line, but there's a lot of stuff they could draw from and change and make. Like if they did the line a little bit better, they'd have a way more scope with it. So there you go, guys. I hope this hasn't been too much of a waffle, and I'm just gonna wrap it up here. And I hope if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Cheers, guys.